I was an investment banker, so I helped to sell more than 20 companies in the space, so total enterprise value more than 25 billion across GovCon and a couple other sectors. One or two person companies, many of them either beyond just being small businesses, they were 8As or SWSBs, and grew those businesses to a point where they were selling them for 100 million to $1 billion. A big important part of what we're trying to do is sort of help people automate a lot of the strategies that those companies use to grow, and to then provide it also at a price point that's reasonable for folks that are just starting out. But a very small percentage of opportunities ultimately end up on SAM. It's roughly 20%, depending on how you measure, maybe even like a smaller number.
There are a lot of different platforms. SAM.gov is not the holy grail. Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Curtis A. Merriweather Jr. Many of you guys know on this channel in 2020, I was named a game changer by the White House Policy Advisor for Innovation Entrepreneurship. And this year, I was notified I will be getting the 2024 Lifetime Achievement Award from the Biden administration. Now, if you've been on this channel for any length of time, you already know our mission, our goal is to educate entrepreneurs. And the way we educate entrepreneurs is through education, consultation, and training support services. The goal here is to help you lower your learning curve and accelerate your business profitability. Now, many of you guys know I've been in this space now for about 28 years. I've been in this space. I've been in and around government contracting for a long time. And what we want to do on this channel, we want to share practical lessons learned. We got some advanced education. Many of you guys know I do have a PhD in management. And we just simply want to help you to just accelerate your business trajectory in this game. Now, as you will see on the screen, you'll see my URL has changed since we've launched the government contracting channel. I definitely want to send you to our website at 8figuregovcon.com. The GovCon is short for government contracting. That's our teaching platform. Now, I want to say this. On our channel, we're not paying for the content. You're really paying for me to guide you along on your government contracting journey. I'm going to be your guided coach and mentor as I help guide you along your government contracting journey. If you want to go directly to our course store library, you can go to 8figuregovcon.com and go to the store tab, and you'll go directly to our course offerings. We got two flagship programs, as you guys know, the 8-Figure Government Contracting Program Bundle and the 8-Figure Government Contracting for Barbers and Cosmetologists. Now, as we celebrate or get ready to celebrate summer, I'm going to do a new coupon code. It's going to be called Summer 2024. It is going to expire on June 20th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the kickoff date for the beginning of the summer. But I want to be your coach, and I want to give you a special offer. It's going to take 20% off of anything in our course store library. Now, before we jump into our topic for today, and I have a great topic for you guys today, I want you to like, I want you to share, and I want you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way, anytime I produce new content, you will be notified most expeditiously. Okay. Well, now that we had all of that out the way, I have a special treat for you guys today. You know, as I kind of scroll through the YouTube streets, I'm always looking for how do I provide additional value to our viewers and subscribers. So today I have a special guest. I'm getting ready to bring him to the stage here momentarily. But before I do, I want to get ready to introduce you all to Mr. Justin Siken, who is the founder of Hire Gov. You're going to learn all about Hire Gov here momentarily. He's an expert in federal, state, and local contracting market trends. Hire Gov helps government contractors discover more opportunities, identify potential partners, and quickly find the market insights needed to win. Now, prior to founding Hire Gov, Justin advised on the sale of more than 20 companies with more than $25 billion in revenue in the GovCon, fintech, and media sectors. Okay, welcome to the stage, my new friend, Justin. Justin, it's good to see you, brother.
Chris, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Man, thank you for coming on the podcast, on the YouTube channel. Glad to have you today. I'm just gonna jump right into it. I learned about HigherGov. We talked about before we came on here today. I learned about HigherGov through one of my students. And so I went and I did some tire kicking myself, and I went and looked at the platform. And I must say, you put together a remarkable platform for analysis, capture, BD, even some private equity stuff. As you know, we're moving into that space. So, before we get into the platform, though, I have to ask, who is Mr. Justin Siken? Who is Justin?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of Hire Gov, which is a market intelligence platform for government contractors, grant recipients, both the federal and state and local market. I spend all day thinking about government contracting trends and talking to small businesses in the sector, and really trying to take the things that are working for folks and are not working for folks, and kind of build that into our platform, and sort of allow people to automate what they're doing and find insights faster, and basically win more contracts. As you mentioned, prior to founding HigherGov, I was an investment banker, so I helped to sell more than 20 companies in the space, so total enterprise value more than 25 billion across GovCon and a couple other sectors. And pretty much all those businesses, started out as one or two person companies. Many of them either beyond just being small businesses, they were 8As or SWSBs, and grew those businesses to a point where they were selling them for 100 million to $1 billion. And so a big important part of what we're trying to do is sort of help people automate a lot of the strategies that those companies use to grow, and to then provide it also at a price point that's reasonable for folks that are just starting out.
Awesome. So you talked about kind of your origin story and kind of how you got into the space. You were doing some investment banking. You saw a need, and you created this thing we call HigherGov. What exactly is HigherGov?
Sure. So it's a tool for searching for opportunities at its basic core, and those could be tools for just searching for the kinds of things you would find on SAM, but a very small percentage of opportunities ultimately end up on SAM. It's roughly 20%, depending on how you measure, maybe even like a smaller number. So we also incorporate forecasts and recompetes, and looking at vulnerable companies and stuff like that. Basically, a bunch of different ways of try to find opportunities. We also have tools for identifying potential partners, either folks that you were a sub that you would prime with, or if you were a prime, that would make sense as sub partners. And we also have tools for marketing to the government, and labor pricing, doing a market analysis, figuring out like where companies fit in best in the market. So really, it's really meant to be kind of a whole suite of tools to identify opportunities, figure out if they make sense to pursue, and then position yourself to win them, if you do pursue them. And then also really to sort of help capture that, sort of that 80% of contracts that are either, done through a vehicle and aren't available to the public, or are sole sourced, or are, otherwise kind of just not something, again, that the government's kind of posting out there for everyone to bid on.
No, that's really good. I mean, you said a few things, Justin, the very first time I told people that everything was not on sam.gov, for a lot of the newer subscribers on this channel, they want to nail me to the cross. And I'm like, guys, there are a lot of different platforms. Sam.gov is not the holy grail. But you mentioned a couple good things. You talked about the forecasting process. We all know that everything does not see sam.gov. And I find a lot of other channels who preach going on sam.gov, and just bid. What are your thoughts about when you find an opportunity for the first time, no customer, the agency doesn't know you, and just placing a bid? What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, it can work. I mean, companies do win money that way for sure. That work is generally probably going to be stuff that PTA, lowest price technically acceptable type work, where the government's going to award it to the lowest bidder. So even if you do win it, it's more likely to be kind of lower end, smaller, lower end type contracts. I'll tell you, larger contractors, and the ones that have been most successful, if they're seeing something in SAM and it's the first time they know about it, they're not bidding on it, because they want to have known about this. They knew about it 3 years ago because this company is currently doing that work, and they want to see it again in a year when it shows up on a forecast, and they get more information on the sizing and how the government's thinking about procuring it. And they want to reach out to the contracting officer at that point and provide thoughts on how the government should be procuring that. And then ultimately, when it comes out on SAM, they've got a huge head start in how that looks. And I mean, a lot of times, and this is something I think when we speak to folks that maybe been doing government contracting to like 6 months to a year, they start to realize, like, hey, these things on SAM seem like it's written for like a specific company. And a lot of times it is, because a lot of times things are written either for the incumbent, because the government likes what they're getting to some extent, and so they write the specifications to meet what their current incumbent is doing. Or during the forecasting stage, companies have resources sent the government, hey, this is how we think you should think about this. And if they think that's a good idea, they may effectively copy and paste that into the solicitation. So you're competing against a benchmark that someone else set 6 months even before you knew about it. Which is, again, why not to say that, SAM isn't an important resource and a thing to understand. But, ideally, the most successful companies are those that are really sort of identifying those things, well in advance of when they're on SAM. And there's a few different ways to go about that.
No, that's all good. Now, I have to ask, there are a lot of market intelligence tools. I have been very impressed personally with what I've seen from HigherGov. But the question is, why should government contracting entrepreneurs, especially the new guys or girls, we're an equal opportunity channel, why should they use marketing intelligence tools in the first place?
Well, again, it's really because that you're really limiting yourself to get that 20% that's on SAM. That's one piece of it, and two, some things are either like extremely time consuming to do using the government tools, or just not possible at all. I'll give a couple quick examples, like common strategies folks will use on our platform. So for folks that get the 8A certification, which is the minority disadvantage certification, which I recommend for folks that have some experience and are relevant for it to think about getting that. Those types of solicitations rarely come out. Things for that rarely come out on SAM. Now, some do for sure. But most of those things either come out through a vehicle like 8A stars, or they are sole sourced. And so the way the most successful 8A contractors will find opportunities is they will look at existing contracts that are expiring soon, where the current 8A who holds that contract has graduated from the program. So they are no longer in the program. They can no longer continue to do that work. It will need to go to a new company. And then recommendation would be to reach out to that company and say, hey, I'll prime it, you sub to me. Maybe we keep doing this as a sole source. Or if the company isn't receptive to that, reach out to the contracting officer. Say, hey, we can do this work. Why don't you sole source it to us? Identifying those contracts, basically impossible through any, it would require pulling several different public data sets together and sort of building out, so basically programming in a tool to identify those contracts. It's a single click in HigherGov, to get those opportunities. Likewise, identifying, one of the things we recommend if you get any sort of certification, whether it's SWSB or 8A or women-owned small business, is identify those contracting officers that award the most work to those certifications. Send them a capability statement, let them know you exist. Again, doing a strategy like that is I don't even know how you do it in the government tools without, again, pulling in a bunch of data and put it together. Again, it's kind of a 1 or 2 click thing in HigherGov to build a list like that. So really, it's those sort of more. I say it's advanced strategies, but honestly, to some extent, it's table stakes. I think to be competitive on some of these things are at doing strategies like that, and market intelligence tools, whether it's HigherGov or different tools, that are out there that sort of allow international matter. And these are things that, larger companies, your Booz Allens, your Raytheons, et cetera, they have thousands of business development people often who can do these things. If you're a solo entrepreneur, again, you need kind of the one-click, two-click solution. So that's very much what we're kind of focused on.
No, that's a great point. Now, for the people who would push back and say, okay, Justin, you want me to look at potentially getting a subscription to HigherGov, but all this information is available on USA Spending and FPDS. What would you say to that person?
Well, first of all, it's not necessarily all available on there. The sites don't necessarily show everything. Also, we do a lot of FOIA requests and stuff like that too. So some of the data that we have is data that is sort of public, but there's nowhere for you to go and get it. You have to request the agencies to get that kind of information. So, and then, like I said, some of these things, yes, you can get contract data on USA Spending, but actually turning that into something actionable, is more complicated and time consuming, which the time value of it. And so we've made a big focus on our lowest price point is very low. It's $500. It basically gives you equivalent to what you get are $5,000 or $10,000 price points of other other systems. But I sort of say to folks, you don't necessarily need a market intelligence platform. But if you look at most companies that have grown to more than a few $1 million of revenue, almost universally they're going to have one or more market intelligence platforms. That's just sort of the reality is that the folks you're competing against do have these tools. And so if they're able to use them to bid more, bid faster, bid smarter, you're sort of at a disadvantage if you don't have them available to you.
No, I agree. That's all good. We talked earlier before we got started, and I talked about how in my government contracting journey, I also used the market intel tool. And I think the thing that I really value that you've made it accessible for the newer entrepreneur, because historically you had to pay tens of thousands of dollars even for some of the lower packages, and you put together a very robust solution, I think, at a very effective and fair price. So I really admonish you for that. And I do believe that it really, really, really gives the entrepreneur the competitive advantage. When you're a new entrepreneur and you have access to data that your peers do not have, it definitely gives you an edge over the competition. Being able to put together that teaming strategy, looking for teaming partners, and not just going through the SBA Dynamic Small Business Dynamic Search tool, which we've all used. And we won't talk about how effective it is because I don't think it's very effective at all. But having tools like yours, I think, is an absolute game changer. I really do. So moving right on along. Now, you talked about a lot. You talked about this FOIA tool, which I just learned that you had this FOIA tool. For people who are new to FOIA, what is FOIA and why would it be helpful?
Sure. So FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act. And we approach FOIA two different ways on our platform. One is stuff that we just FOIA as normal course. So like, for example, there's a system called eBuy. It's a government system that has certain vehicle data. Basically, it's kind of like SAM, but you need to get permission to get access to it. And there's a lot of stuff that gets posted up on there. Usually you get access to it after you've been a contractor for a few years and you apply for a multiple award schedule or 8A stars contracting vehicles. We FOIA that entire database and put it into our platform. So basically it helps you do historical research so you can understand like, hey, here's some solicitations that weren't on SAM. These were on eBuy. What did these look like? Who won these things? Here's some details about that. So again, it just sort of gives you access to data that you don't have. The other tool we have around FOIA is being able to request documents for specific contracts. So the most common sort of use case or things we'll do there, again, not to hammer home on this, but most opportunities do not end up in SAM. And so when an opportunity was in SAM or was publicly disclosed, in our system, when you're looking at the contract award data, we're going to link it back to those prior documents. So you can see the solicitation, you can see, the statement of work and all that information around the solicitation. But for that other 80%, whether it was under a vehicle or was sole sourced and it hasn't been publicly disclosed, it's basically a tool that allows you with like one click to request those documents. We basically go to the government and say, hey, under FOIA, please provide us with the relevant documents. Anyone can FOIA the government. So if you go to, I think it's FOIA.gov, get the agency, get the contract ID, anyone can FOIA the government. The benefit of doing it through a platform like ours is that one, it's anonymous, so your name's not associated with it, and two, you don't have to deal with the process. It can be kind of an annoying process, and every agency does it a little bit differently. But also, the FOIA kind of annoys contracting officers, and you don't really want to annoy the person you're going to be, applying for a contract for potentially. So it's our name on it, and we're annoying the contracting officer and not you. But a lot of again, larger contractors, they'll use the FOIA process to, if their competitor wins a contract, they'll FOIA those contract documents so they can understand, okay, what is my competitor doing? What's the statement of work? What type of work is on this? So then when that comes out for recompete, whether it's in a year or 5 years down the line, again, you kind of already have all that knowledge. FOIA is not a quick process. It can take up to a year, so it's not really quick to get those documents. But it is a way to kind of get access to documents and intel on a contract that, again, other people in the market won't have, which, helps you in, developing your bidding strategy and stuff like that. So
one of the things I did briefly, just to give people an overview, this came right from one of your capability overviews, but I just kind of wanted to just show that at a very high level, some of the things that the HigherGov tool does. So you got real-time opportunity tracking. You got the ability to look at some subcontracting. I like this vulnerable incumbents. Can you talk about the vulnerable incumbent piece just briefly?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it with the vulnerable 8A. So we consider that to be a vulnerable incumbent. There's also what we call vulnerable small business. The way that small business set-aside contracts work in the government is that every contract will have a NAICS code associated with it. And that NAICS code has a size threshold. So let's say the size threshold is $30 million. If the size threshold is $30 million, there's a couple different ways to calculate it, but generally speaking, if a company is under $30 million of revenue on a trailing 3 or 5 year basis, that company is a small business. So only that company, or only companies that are under that size threshold can win that contract. What happens though is companies that are successful win a bunch of contracts and are then over that threshold, or they get acquired. They get acquired again by like an SAIC or a Leidos or a Booz Allen, and then they're no longer a small business anymore. So what happens is when those contracts end, the current contractor can't keep doing that work. It has to go to someone else. And a lot of folks like to specifically target those contracts when they come up for recompete because 80 or 90% of contracts that come out go to the incumbent. So same company tends to win kind of things over and over again. There's a number of reasons for that, but this sort of allows you to identify, with one click again, what are those contracts where when this ends, it's gonna have to go to somebody new because the current contractor can't keep doing it because they're too large. And the two common strategies there, again, would be either reach out to the current contractor that's doing it and say, hey, I'm a small business, I'm capable of doing this work. Why don't I prime it and you sub to me? So then you would be the new prime that's under the size threshold, and the existing contractor would sub to you, and then you get the benefit of their prior experience, when you're going after that contract. Or again, if it's something where the contractor doesn't want to work with you, you either monitor it for when it comes out in SAM, or if it's under a vehicle, you try to get access to that vehicle to pursue it when it ultimately comes out. But again, it's just kind of a way of a lot of successful contractors will sort of try to find angles like that on contracts rather than kind of looking and saying, hey, in my NAICS code, 541611, there's 80,000 contracts coming up for recompete this next year. Why don't I first look at the 300 or 400 of those where I know the current company can't keep doing it because they've sized out a small business. So it's a tool for kind of narrowing your aperture to those contracts where as a small business it might be easier to kind of win.
Well, that's good. I'm going through your list a little more. Here's another big one that we all talk about on channels like this: the contract forecast. How is the tool being used to do things like contract forecasting?
So unfortunately, with contract forecasts, there's not one site where contract forecasts are posted up. There's 40 or 50, and I use the term site loosely. Some agencies, like DHS, for example, Department of Homeland Security, they have a system called APFS. where they post, here's what we're planning as DHS, here's what we're planning on procuring over the next year or so. And they update it somewhat in real time of their thoughts on things they're planning on forecasting. So there's a bunch of different sites. USAID has a site like that. HHS is a site like that. Department of Commerce is a site like that, where they're kind of posting, here's the things we're planning on procuring over the next year or so. Other agencies, particularly the Department of Defense, they just kind of put spreadsheets out every once in a while, not always in the same spot. And so we basically turn those different sites and all that information into a forecast module, which allows you to, while you're searching for opportunities that are currently actionable, you can also search for things that are coming up in the forecasts. And what we recommend in the forecasts is forecasts aren't really a thing you have to check every day. I'd say if you're actively pursuing solicitations and stuff like that, that's something you need to be doing every day. Those have a tight turnaround time. And so you need to be sort of monitoring those every day. Forecasts are something you can look at, once a month or so, or once every couple months. But it's really going into those forecasts, seeing where, there might be good fits. And there's generally two major approaches, I would say, when you see a forecast that's a fit. If it's something that you could prime, a lot of times you may want to reach out to the contracting officer. You'll see a lot of times in those forecasts, like the set aside, for example, will be TBD, which basically means the government hasn't decided how they're going to procure that yet. Send them a capability statement, being thoughtful and letting them know how you as a business could be helpful or bring unique experience to the table, can help to shape that opportunity to come out in a way that's more favorable to you. Now, will the contracting officers often ignore it? 100%, yes. But persistence in attacking those can be very valuable. And again, it's a thing that larger contractors, they want to hit those things as early as possible. And so, as a small business that needs to be able to compete with sort of larger, more established companies, that can be a valuable approach. The second approach with forecasts I recommend is, if you have sort of established primes that you're partnered with or teaming with, forecasts are a great opportunity to start talking with that teaming partner earlier on about ways you could work together on that contract. Because again, if you're waiting for something to come out on SAM, a lot of times the turnaround time is 2 weeks. It's not really enough time. One, the primes may already know who they're going to work with on that, and even if not, 2 weeks isn't really enough time to establish a relationship, get a teaming agreement in place, decide how you're going to go after it, et cetera. But if you know about it 6 months before it's going to come out, and you know how large it's going to be, and you know how the government's planning on procuring it, that gives you a lot more time to talk to your partners about those sorts of things. So what a lot of successful contractors will do is they'll kind of take a look at the forecasts and the recompetes, and they'll put together sort of a list of, okay, here's partner X that I'm working with. Let me come to them with these 4 or 5 things that are recompeting in these 4 or 5 forecasts, and let's see if they're interested in working with me on any of these. So it's both, forecasts are both a way of building out your pipeline, talking sooner, talking to the government and shaping opportunities, but then also working with partners to find things that you can work on together, sort of before they are immediately actionable and you don't have time to do that.
No, that's really good. Really good. All that was helpful advice. Sound like you've been in a couple of my classes. I'm just joking. You've been around here for a while. Another one that I thought was interesting was this recompete module. Can you talk about that one briefly?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, that's just a way of a lot of times people will pair that recompetes with the vulnerable incumbents. I mean, the recompetes is really any contract that's ending. By default, we look 1 year forward, but you can look 2 years forward, 3 years forward, et cetera. But really, it's a way of looking at what contracts are coming up for recompete over the next year or so. And again, a lot of those contracts are either going to be on vehicles, or they may be sole source, and those items are never going to show up in SAM. And so really the only way to know they're even happening is to look at contracts that are coming up for recompete, and then kind of inserting yourself in the process, either as a subcontractor to the primes that may hold the vehicle that contract is under, or if it's sole source, figuring out what kind of sole source it is and talking to the government and let them know, hey, I can also do this work and you shouldn't be sole sourcing it. Which is particularly relevant, if you offer something that's like a more of a niche service that not a lot of folks can do. The government has a tendency to this happens to small contractors, this happens to large contractors too, where the government thinks, hey, there's only one company that can do this, and they keep awarding them the same contract sole source, non-competitive, over and over again. And there are other companies that can do it. They just haven't told the government. And so the government doesn't even know that you can do it. So looking at recompetes, basically looking at, for example, sole source contracts that are coming up for recompete, if it's something that you are genuinely capable of doing, letting the government know you're capable of doing that work, is a way to kind of get in there, again, on opportunities that are never going to show up in SAM because it's under a vehicle or because it's being sole sourced.
No, that was helpful. And last but not least, can you talk about the SBIR, that's the Small Business Innovation Research for folks who are new, and the grant module in HigherGov?
Sure. So we integrate data from SBIR.gov as well as grants.gov. So most often for-profit companies, there's not a ton of stuff usually in kind of grants. Most of that money kind of goes to like nonprofits or to state or local agencies. Now, there are some more advanced approaches you can take there, particularly if you are also in the state and local market. A lot of savvy contractors on the state and local market will monitor federal grants because the way most state and local, or I should say most, but many state and local contracts happen is the government gives a grant to a city or a state. And then at that point, the city or the state will then, or university will then put out a contract opportunity. So if you do the state and local market, a lot of folks will monitor kind of where the federal money is flowing and then try to get to those state and local agencies before they ever become solicitations. It's kind of a way of positioning themselves to win those awards. So as like an example, the Infrastructure Act, almost none of it, it's federal money, but almost none of that gets awarded through federal procurement. Almost all of it goes to grants to states and cities for specific things, and then they put out opportunities to do paving roads or whatnot on a state and local level. So you can monitor federal grants and get ahead of the game on sort of state and local opportunities. SBIRs, it's a great program if you are in any way in kind of like the research and development arm of kind of federal contracting. So what it is the government basically will pay you to do research and development. And there are 3 phases of the SBIR program. The first phase is really just kind of proving out, is this kind of potentially a real thing? Usually I think it's like $50,000 to $250,000. The next phase is like prototyping, where you build a prototype. And then the third phase is basically unlimited money, potentially, if you develop something the government wants to buy. So if you are at all in research and development, whether that's software or products, we recommend monitoring SBIRs. They're also called SITRs, STTRs as well, for those sorts of opportunities, because it's really a way to get the government to fund your R&D and then potentially grow that into very large contracts. There are multi-billion-dollar SBIRs. SBIR stage 3s out there, where that started as little $50,000 awards, that group that where the government funded the development, and now companies are bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars, from what they've developed with that money. So it's a great program. We actually did a study that found like companies that have won SBIRs, like it just completely outpace everyone else in the market in terms of growth over time. So it's, again, if you're anywhere in R&D, strongly recommend monitoring kind of the SBIR market for those. The way that works, the government will put out topics. So they'll say, hey, we want this nanotechnology. We want more nanotechnology in this kind of area, and then you basically respond with a proposal of what you would look to research under that topic.
No, thank you so much, Justin. As we go, I'm gonna highlight a couple things because I know we're getting close to time. But I do want to just caution the audience to definitely go take a look at the HigherGov tool suite. There's a lot of good stuff in here. You can find partners. You got some market expansion tools, how to identify new customers, inorganic growth. So my folks who are like myself, who are buying other companies, that's the strategy that we're now employing, is what we call inorganic growth, or actually the acquisition of new companies. This is going to be a great tool for that. Also, some capture management. For those who are in the 8-figure government contracting community with me, we talk about capture management a lot. Matter of fact, we're doing some capture management sessions right now. You got some projections and attribution. You got some funnel analysis. You got collaboration tools. This is just a strong tool suite. And I know we couldn't go end to end in this time that we have with Justin. We're thankful that he joined us. But you got some marketing boosters, some marketing audit, some customizing your profiles. Of course, we all on this channel, y'all know that I am biased toward federal government contracting, but the tool has some state and local opportunity market analysis and trending data in there as well. So you definitely want to take a look at the Hire Gov tool suite because I really believe it could be an actual game changer and revolutionize just how we're doing business today. Anything that I missed in the time that we have together, Justin, that you want the people to know about?
I think we've covered a lot of the important things. I mean, I think, and I'm sure you talk about this, but the government is very incentivized to increase the number of small businesses that are involved in federal contracting. It's a number the number of federal small business and federal contracting has declined by more than half in the last 10 to 12 years, while the number of dollars getting awarded is increased, which means that it's a little bit harder to get in the door than it used to be as a contractor, and it's probably not going to get any easier. But the rewards for doing so, are continuing to increase. I mean, I think the median small business contractor is now kind of in like the $2 to $4 million range of revenue, and that's that used to be like 500 grand. So it's really become more and more lucrative to get into this market. And at the same time, though, it's become more competitive. And if you look at kind of the average number of bids that an opportunity receives, it was 3 or 4 years ago, it was around 2.9. Now it's up to 3.4, and that number has been continuing to increase. So things have also become more competitive in that market. So it's important to, whether or not you use a tool like HigherGov or not. I mean, I think the strategies that I've mentioned, and I know Chris talks about here all the time, whether you use government sites to implement those or you buy a tool to implement those, the strategies are just kind of more and more important. And it's rare that, I talked to a company that's kind of, reached the, 10, 20 million, $100 million that aren't doing, some portion of the things that we talked about today. So.
No, agree. I agree. And I thank you for sharing. And I'm gonna just go ahead and say this. I said it before, I'm gonna say it again because I do not want to underemphasize what I'm getting ready to say. When you're doing a lot of the things that we teach on this channel, a lot of the things that you heard Justin say today, data oftentimes is the differentiator. So if you're doing the things everyone else is doing, but you have a data disadvantage, it could prolong how long you find real, true, measurable success in the space. As we know, in the current market, data is the new goal. And I'm just going to super encourage you to definitely go take a look at the platform. I know that for a limited time that Justin is doing a free trial. Definitely kick the tires, look at the tool. He has some great support built into the tool suite. And I'm going to say for what you're getting, this, quite frankly, this capability was not available when I got started and I launched our government contracting firm in 2008. Many of you guys know the story. We actually started making money in 2010. It was tools like this, and the price point is amazing. It was tools like this that really gave us that differentiated advantage over our competition. So, Justin, I thank you for joining us today. As on the screen, you will see I do have Justin's information. So it's Justin at HigherGov.com. So definitely go take a look. Look at the platform, give it some strong consideration. He's made it where it's very much of a price advantage for you to jump in and definitely get that advantage you need to take your business to the next level. Justin, again, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in a future podcast. Okay, guys, that's all we got for this episode. I didn't want to make it super long. Justin and I could have probably spent 2 hours just going through the capabilities in HigherGov. But on this channel, my goal is really to bring you value-added content that you're not going to find anywhere else. It's really going to help you to accelerate in the space and capture more market share. I want you to get more market share. So one of the things we're getting ready to launch on this channel is I'm going to bring along a lot of different tools, tips, and strategies going to help you, not just the process. We all on here teaching process, but it's going to really help you stand apart against the competition and gain some much needed market share. And I want you to be doing the things that larger businesses do at a fraction of the cost. It's going to really help you revolutionize your business, because if you revolutionize your business, not only is it going to allow you to do more force multiplication in the industry as a job creator, but it's also going to trickle down to your personal financial statement. And that's what we're about here. Well, that's all we got for this video. I want you to come back and watch a future video, but in the meantime, go back and watch some of my previous videos, and I'll see you on the next video. Until next time.